My next guest on today's podcast is Ajita Shah.
Thank you very much, Anis, for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Ajita is a founder, a holistic healer, a spiritual practitioner, and more importantly, a person to somebody you should not miss out this podcast about.
I am going to connect with my soul is going to connect with your soul on a very different dimension. And I am going to be privy to who and what is Anis all about.
Her entire perspective about healing and how each one of us should probably get into a healing practice will really amaze you about her thoughts and her perspective about her own personal journey and the life she has touched.
She was darker, fatter, all of that. So her confidence was completely shattered. We worked on that. Now she's a pretty well confident woman. She just messaged me. Her husband and her are now, they've been in a rental their whole life.
Okay.
Now they're buying a home in London.
Her innovative practice about HIIH, which is holistic, integrated, intuitive healing practice, has really helped her touch many lives and change many lives through this entire practice. So not revealing much about it, and without much further ado, let me get on with it. Hi Ajita, welcome to Masters Decoded Season 3. Really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much, Anis, for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
And I was personally looking forward to this discussion because, I have been on a self-discovery, self-growth journey for the last 3 years, but especially there have been series of events which have happened in the last 1 year, which have got me introduced, or I would say introduced. I've been introduced to a lot of folks, practices and themes, and when I looked at your profile and my team did a lot of research on what you do, got me really excited for this conversation. So thank you for taking time out. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the show today. So let's dive in. And the first thing which kind of caught my attention was HIIH. It's an acronym which you talk about, which you believe in, which you practice, and which you share with others. So you want to explain for the benefit of the audience what is HIIH and what is the genesis of that?
Ooh, that's a long one, but I'm going to do my best to keep this concise. So HIIH actually stands for Holistic, Integrative, Intuitive Healing. And it came about, its origins are when I finished university. So I went to study psychology, child development. And I wanted, like a lot of people, especially with degrees and, education, we come out into the world and we want to make an impact. We want to change the world. So it so happened that I started working with children with special needs. And of course, their parents. Now, there are two very distinct situations and episodes that happened that really hit me hard, because I suddenly had to come face to face with that the degrees that I had on the wall and the purported education I had was insufficient to do the work that I needed to do. The intention that I had to change the world and to get people well, for some reason, it was not working. And there was a missing piece. So the education in itself was very valuable, but there was something else that needed to be stitched in. And it was also, Anis, a time when my own awakening was getting sort of blown open. And so I was too young to see it at the time.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. How did that awakening happen?
So I'll tell you very quickly. There was a young 4-year-old girl who was my client. And she had Down syndrome.
Okay.
And she was a tiny little girl at 4, and one day she came to my clinic and she had a really big burn mark on her entire
Wow.
forearm. And it was really horrible looking. I could tell that she was in a lot of pain. And of course, she couldn't explain to me how that came about. So when her mother came to pick her up, I sat her down, and I was all of 23 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat her down and, I asked her what happened. And she said, oh, I was cooking, and she picked up my husband's glasses and threw them out of the window, 7 floors. And I got really annoyed, and I just picked up the ladle, or the tawa actually.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I just smacked it on her arm. Now, I was horrified as you are, firstly, on just a humanity basis. And then I was just like, what are you doing? Like, how can you discipline a young child who has their own mental challenges in this way? And I think I really came from this place of all-knowingness. And she said to me, she asked me 2 very simple questions. She said, do you have children? I said, no. She said, are you married? I said, no. And she said, oh, then you won't understand what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from. And I said, no, that's not possible, because look at the degrees on my wall.
Yeah.
And she goes, but you won't understand. And that really sort of hit me, that there was the way she spoke to me. I knew that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it led to me doing a lot of introspection. Very quickly, I think I got quite depressed because I couldn't eat. I got emotionally very upset. And I decided to close my practice.
Wow. Okay.
There was another young child, who came from a diamond family, very, very rich. He became blind because they had to put a shunt in his brain. And during the surgery, he lost his eyesight.
Wow.
And he would come, and all he would do was hit himself on his thighs. And, a driver would come drop him. Nobody was interested in him. And being young and being sensitive, and, it just felt very overwhelming that, you're in front of all of these problems and you don't know how to help people overcome them. So I closed my practice and I went very much inward because I didn't know now what to do. I wasn't going to work in psychology for a bit. Funnily enough, Anis, one day when I was coming back home, and I lived in Bandra in Bombay.
Okay.
And I was coming back from uni, and I suddenly saw Raheja School of Architecture on a road that I had gone by, I don't know how many hundreds of times, and I didn't know it existed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And something just said, now I'm in the middle of my master's program.
Mm-hmm.
I jumped off. I went inside. I always wanted to do architecture when I was younger, but then I moved from Delhi to Bombay, and there were just a lot of complications. And I enrolled in the program of interior design.
Wow. From psychology to interior designing. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And, when you have when in hindsight, I realized that I followed my intuition. Mm-hmm. And there was a reason why it was shown to me when it was, because then I got into design head first.
Okay.
Because I thought, there's no human emotion here. I'm not dealing with, people and their minds. And, if I break a chair, who cares?
Yeah.
While I was working in the design field, I was doing a lot of introspection, and what the journey is like. I've been on the journey since I was 4. I'm very clear and aware of that, but it was on a very different note. Mm-hmm. But with this episode, and therefore my decision, I started to meditate and I started to do a lot of different things, and a lot of answers started coming. And I realized through all of that that the work needs to be done at the soul level.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is at the soul level, and the mind is but a small component. So the psychology that I had studied is but one small aspect of
Mm.
the healing process. And then I began to build on that. What does the soul mean? How is this? So it was a bit of a long process, to be honest, Denise. But then I came to the conclusion that our thoughts, our
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, our emotions, karma, which is a really big component, which has a multitude of things in it. All of these things, disease, the body, everything needs to be looked at completely and holistically for an individual to get well and healed.
Mm.
And they all work simultaneously. And every individual has their own blueprint. So a one size fits all course is very limiting.
Yeah.
So that is where and then of course HIIH, because this was all a very internal process. And then people started asking me, what is the name of what you do? What is the name of what you do? Right? And they would say, do you do Reiki? Do you do this? And I'm like, no. Then I thought, I need to come up with a name. So HIIH was born.
Wow. Now, when you completed your interior design program, did you end up taking up a job or doing programs or getting people's house done up or commercial properties done up, or did
All
you
of it.
realized and you said,
No,
no, I probably want to get on to my own personal practice and coaching in a different way?
no. I worked in design for a long time. So just as I was finishing, there was an ad agency or something. It's been so long, but I think they were an ad agency, and they
Mhm.
know I can't even remember how they found me. And I was this young, fresh out of the course. They took me to a jeweler that was actually had come out of Zaveri Bazaar in Bandra, right, Turner Road
Okay.
and Linking Road. And I started to he wanted to up his sales.
Mhm.
And I had done a quick course in window design, window
Okay.
dressing. So I suggested, and he had beautiful, massive windows in his showroom. And that was my first project. And it went phenomenally well. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. His sales went up by like 40%. And then so I basically worked for myself. One thing led to another. I did a lot of homes. I did some restaurants. I did this. But I didn't do it. The funny thing is, because the path was to be different,
Mhm.
this was all a filler.
Okay.
So as well as I was doing in my mind and as well as everybody was happy, it did not propel the way I would have liked to see it.
Mhm.
And it was a very circuitous journey, but to answer your question, that is actually what did happen. So I was doing introspection. I was having a lot of epiphanies. I was doing a lot of healing for people, which I have been doing in an unorganized way most of my life.
Okay.
But that is kind of how it happened.
And when you look back your psychology and what you were working with children and their parents, and then the interior designing, and now being a complete holistic healer, come teacher, come spiritual practitioner, uh, you know, do you have an urge to go back to those parents and to those back to the children to check out what's happening? Have they been healed, or did you go back? That's the question I have for you. Or you didn't have an opportunity to get back to them?
I didn't. This is such a phenomenal thing. It's really triggered something in my mind, Denise. And it brings up a lot of regret. But I think my youthfulness did
Mhm.
not sort of allow me to, I kind of left that behind in many ways. This was before phones and computers,
Yep.
and computers were just coming into the market, so it was hard to keep up and keep in
Mm-hmm.
touch with people. But I also have to be honest and say it was quite traumatic for me that I didn't even turn. Today, I would give a lot to go back and be in touch with those people and see where those children are at. They would be grown up, and and how they're faring in life.
And you threw many things when you were talking about how did HIH, and I would love to double click on each one of them. So you spoke about one thing, which is so true, which often with me personally, I've never seen that working. That there are many courses, there are many programs that say, hey, we'll get everybody in the room and we'll coach them, we'll mentor them, we'll heal them. But to your point, everyone has their own blueprint. That's why each one of us are unique. We have our own DNA strands, which are unique to us. Yes, our DNAs will match with other DNAs, but it's not necessary that we are 100% match. Until unless we have a Siamese twin, that's a different point. But to the point about the blueprint and individualized, specific, personalized programs, how do you define and identify a person's blueprint? Because that's the most difficult aspect of being a healer or a spiritual person or somebody who's coaching others. How do you identify somebody's blueprint and what will work for them and may not work for them?
So there are two aspects. The healer's job, and I'll only speak for myself.
Sure.
When I talk about the soul, now that's a whole different space.
Yep.
When you talk about coaching, most coaching is at the mind level,
Mm-hmm.
right? Most courses appeal to the mind because a large part of the population is very left-brained.
Mm-hmm.
Prove to me, I don't believe in this. This is, woo-woo and humbug and, stuff like that, because we've been trained in society to think that way. The healing arts or the healing science actually
Mm-hmm.
has been left behind.
Yeah.
It's coming back, thank God. So they're two very distinctly different things. And that's a distinction that most people are not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches will give you skills and tools to overcome situations in their lives
Mm-hmm.
through thinking and through doing.
Mm-hmm.
In my healing, I am looking at Anis through a very intuitive process where and I apologize if this sounds so way out there.
No.
But literally, I am going to connect with my soul is going to connect with your soul on a very different dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to be privy to who and what is Anis all about from many lifetimes ago to today.
Okay.
And it's very intuitive. It's very esoteric. There are no words yet in our dictionary to really describe what that is all about.
Yeah.
And that's why I never do healing for anybody without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going into an extremely sacred space and they have to say, yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the fundamental difference. And then we dive into the thoughts and the wounding and all of that at a much, much, much deeper level, and then work from there up. So my healing has two components.
Okay.
I think it's a psychologist in me, where I have a counseling piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it evolved from my healing. I started out when I came back into this, I was a pure healer. Okay. You'd come in front of me, people would come in front of me. I would just do my thing. They would feel better, and that would be the end of the process. But then I started to realize that they function in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And they behave and they think and they operate. And that is what creates their reality. And unless that changes, the healing is not permanent, because my intention and my promise to myself was that I would rather that they never came back, because it was a permanent transformation and healing and cure.
Mm-hmm.
So then slowly, in speaking with them, counseling them, and that's where the teaching component then came, which are mutually exclusive. They can be, but with my clients that are in front of me one-on-one, they are sort of intermeshed.
I've revealed this earlier in bits and pieces in this podcast specifically and in some other videos, but I'm on this personal growth transformation, and as part of that, healing is one of the big factors. I have never, I would say, prior to October 2022, I was a big non believer in meditation. It's not that for any reason, it's just that whenever I tried to practice it, and I was, my mind is, as it's called, it's a monkey mind, but mine was a hyper monkey mind. And if I shut my eyes, I can't just concentrate. My mind would just go all over. But there was this program which I attended. It's called the Life Plugin Summit in 2022 in October, and that introduced me to a lot of practices, like not just meditation, but breath work and many of gratitude practice. And there are many of these practices which I got introduced. And after that, I had a coach uh, who, and that coaching is not a coaching per se, like it's like the holistic one.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a coach which was more of a professional coach way back in 2019 and 2020, but this was more of a holistic, like which touch your mind, your soul, and self-expression, including the body, which has really helped me open up my eyes. And earlier in February, I had a plant medicine practice as well as part of this entire healing
Ooh.
process. And those episodes and the breath work combined, I can say I'm a big believer now. I do understand. But, there's this part of which you said, connecting with soul. Now, like you said, it's a very sacred place, but it's a very dark place also. Uh, like a healer, which you are, you can uncover the dark areas of a soul. And I would use a word dangerous, which may be hidden or not unknowingly or knowingly by the other individual whom you are, healing. How do you protect yourself before you protect others? Because it can really disturb you, it can really harm you more than anything else. So, how do you ensure that you are protected as part of that?
So when I started out, this is such an incredible, even to have this awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I applaud you. When I started out in my younger days, I was just enthusiastic to do, and I was clearing and I was doing, and I was a little bit clueless about what I was doing, and and there was no protection.
Mm-hmm.
So every week I would work for 3 days and I would be sick for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
and sick, violently sick. Like I would be in bed, I wouldn't be able to get out, I would be throwing up, I would have emotional issues, I could get very angry. Firstly, being an empath, and you need to have an open soul to be able to do this work, to give and receive. So I was walking around all open in all ways and absorbing all of this, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very damaging.
Mm.
And then I actually met a healer from Israel
Okay.
who, couple of sentences that he said to me that really helped me get on this track of creating a more organized system for myself and to do the work. So we were talking, and and I mentioned that I'm getting sick all the time, and this is so hard to continue. And he goes, are you protecting yourself? And I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, if you're not going to protect yourself, then of course you're going to be in trouble.
Mm.
So he was the first one to introduce me to, a very basic way of protecting myself. And I started to do that. Since then, I have created a pretty advanced version of that. And it is the first thing I do when I wake up.
Okay.
Before I step out of bed. And I teach this to all of my clients, because even as individuals, as we're walking about, we're picking up energies, and not only from each other, but this empty space is more than hydrogen and oxygen. There are a lot of energies and entities, and not ghosts alone, but many, many other types of energies that are there that impact us. So everybody needs protection and grounding. But this is something that I do. I do still, get derailed off and on, but now it is few and far between.
Interesting. Now, let's switch sides now. For a person who's getting healed, and as you tap into their soul, it may uncover things for them which can get them be dangerous, and I've shared this with others. I have had people who've been through the exercise, then they've never been suicidal, as an example. They suddenly become suicidal as part of this exercise, or they have self-doubt, which starts becoming a more prominent piece, and it's all part of the healing process. But that moment or that phase can be really dangerous for that individual. So how do you protect the other person now? A reverse question, because like you said, you have your own practices, and if you're open, you can share that. But for others who the clients are, it can get a little bad. And I have seen, in the healing process, it's called purging. You can purge in many ways as part of your healing process, and these purges can be depending upon how deep the trauma is, how deep that dark side is. Your purging can be more aggravated. So how do you ensure that the other side is protected?
I'm going to say something that is not going to be very popular.
Okay.
And
Go for it.
So the purging that you talk about, I don't do that. Okay. So now ayahuasca, different types of plant medicine, and a lot of practices that are out there that people get together for a weekend, they do whatever they do, they purge, and then they go back home. Right? I am critically against this. And I'll tell you why. This is semi-money making scheme. As far as I'm concerned, right? So I'm not saying you don't get a benefit from it, but the downside is way bigger, and I'll tell you why. So when you go back into the history of these things, when the shamans would do these ayahuasca ceremonies for people, you had the teacher, the shaman, with you before, and they came to the conclusion that this ceremony is going to help you. Then they were with you during, and then they supported you through, excuse my French, but the shit that came up.
Yeah.
The problem is not the purging. The problem is, how are you managing now the crap that has come to the surface? How are you making sense of it and continue? That purge lasts a long time. And that is your dangerous period, which in modern society and this modern healing, they do this thing for 3 days, 1 day, 2 days, and then they send you off. And now you're on your own, and you are now in touch with your shadow, obvious and not. And you don't have the tools to manage it, and you don't have anybody else who's holding your hand. Who is that level of a spiritual healer who can do it? So I'll tell you, a client of mine who
Mm-hmm.
had been working with me for 1 year and doing brilliantly well
Okay.
decided to go for one of these ceremonies because one of her friends was in being sort of certifying herself in plant medicine and kept telling her, you got to come, you got to come, you got to come. Now, this lady, as well as she was doing, she had some very dark places with me also, she was
Okay.
unwilling to go to. So I was unraveling that one petal at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes to California. She lives in the States, so she went to California for a weekend.
Okay.
And we had spoken about this, and I had see, it's not my place to tell anybody what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a great relationship. And so I did tell her honestly why I think she was not ready for it.
Okay.
But she decided to go. She came back after 3 days and she had completely lost it.
Wow.
She picked up fights. She came back firstly with a bit of an attitude that I'm healed and I know, and what I have experienced is the be all and end all of it. And she picked a fight with me. She picked a fight with, so we had a group. She had brought a whole bunch of people to me, her friends, and even her mother who was suffering from cancer. You know, she was such a big proponent of my work. So I knew what was happening with all of them and her. And she picked a fight with everybody. And
Wow.
she got really alienated. Um, and it's because now all the things that were coming up, she did not know how to manage them. And if we do it the way it was intended to be done,
Yeah.
see, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about in healing is ancient wisdom, Anis.
Yeah.
And it has been done for thousands and thousands of years back then in a certain way, in a very responsible way.
Yeah.
Today, we're taking components of it and running with them with very incomplete knowledge, information, and skills, if I may say so.
Yeah.
And so the the receivers sometimes are more at a disadvantage than at an advantage.
Hmm.
You know, even with courses, I'll tell you, if I may, when I started way back when, I decided to read some books, self
Okay.
help books. You know, and there's a plethora of incredible knowledge there.
Yeah.
And I would read the testimonials, and people would say, my God, this changed my life, and this happened, that happened. I read 5 books.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of each book, I was pretty well the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to feel maybe I was stupid. Maybe something was drastically wrong with me because now I've read not one, not two, not but 5 books, and I haven't had an iota of a difference in a change.
Yeah.
Right? Books appeal to a very different part of us,
Yeah.
and they train us from a very different part. You know, when you're looking for healing and all of these things, um, there are many, many other things we have to consider.
Yeah. So, can I meaning build on this? Like you mentioned that healing and healing practices are ancient wisdoms and they've been followed for many, many years. And you did say that earlier that healing as a practice, both from a practitioner and from the person who's receiving it, it's coming back, which is a good thing. Uh, but somewhere, to your point earlier, it's being done in pockets, not being done holistically. At least for me, what I have seen and what I have realized, and I'll share it because I'm on this journey, not through self help, but with people around me and ensuring that they're there as part of this journey. It's not a, you do it once and you forget it. And you feel
Exactly.
like you said that you're healed. Uh, you know, uh, that, and you said it's a multi-layered healing process also. And life is pardon my French, is shit, right? While you heal every day, you may pick up things in your life every day, right? So
Exactly.
it's not that you heal. It's like you're playing a game on a street or on a ground, and you're bound to fall, as an example. And if you fall, you will get hurt, and you may have some scratches, you may have big bruises, you may fracture, you may. So the healing or the issues can be small or large, but over a period of time, there is a snowball effect, and then they just build up. So, as a healer, do you see people on a journey where they say, I'm done with this, I'm not, versus people who've been on the journey, over a period of time, they become better and better as things get, much better. So how, what's your perspective? And, do people should do, they do it short term, or should they continue on this journey for a long time?
So, firstly, I'll say the big umbrella thing is that we are here
Mm-hmm.
on a healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of us don't indulge in it. Most of us don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in our lives, which is normally later in our lives, we start to ask this big, deep question, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
I am all about wanting to tell people why they are here when they're very little. So,
Okay.
from a journey perspective, this is an entire journey. Now, your question is more that when we're on a conscious journey.
Yeah.
So, like if you are going to eat healthy,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to go to the gym, this is a forever thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You start somewhere, and as it builds on it, you learn new things, you are become a higher vibrational being, and it's all, at the end of the day, it's becoming a higher vibrational being with everything that we do as we heal and drop off the gunk. And, as we, I will even say, we don't have to do a lot of practices.
Mm-hmm.
If we can offload, we're already clean.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we do some very fundamental things, like even just stillness,
Mm-hmm.
going back to when you said, I didn't like meditating. I have a lot of clients who say, oh, I can't meditate. Well, of course you can't. It is contrary to what we have been taught. We're more a doing society. And imagine telling somebody, get your answers by doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like they'll think you're nuts. But now we're talking about the wisdom of that,
Yeah.
And so I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? I'm sorry, Anis.
No, you were talking about the continuous healing process of how.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
So then you will say, okay, now you went to some courses where they gave you some tools.
Yeah.
The tools are less important. The doing and creating the habit is more important, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, this is, you might not do the same thing forever,
Mm-hmm.
but doing something forever is absolutely imperative.
Yeah.
Now, going back to one of the questions you asked me about with my clients. So when I started, because I was unsure how I would be received,
Yeah.
for years, I didn't tell people what I do.
Okay.
I
Why?
said I was in a cave. Well, because, there was so much judgment. I mean, even today, I have lost friends in the last couple of years
Okay.
because they are wounded.
Okay.
Therefore, they're afraid of what I might find. Just through a regular relationship, they don't understand. And therefore, what we don't understand, we let go of.
Yeah.
So back in the day, today at least, healing is becoming a thing.
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago, it was not a thing unless you were like a monk.
Yep. Or
Right?
people would say you're a Sant Sadhu or a Peer Muhammad,
Ex-
right? Many.
Exactly. That's who you had to be.
Yeah. So.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
then you were qualified that, okay, if somebody went to a peer or somebody went to a Babaji or a Pandit, they had the, what it takes.
Yep.
Me, little girl in my jeans and my top and whatever, like, what do you know? So I wouldn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but coming back to, so when I started, then I would say, oh, okay, only 4 weeks, 1 month.
Hmm.
And I would take an immediate problem and work with it.
Okay.
Today, I am at a place where I say to people, if you're coming to me at 30, 40, and 50 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you have 50 years of problems that you have amassed.
Okay.
So it's not going away, anytime soon.
Yeah.
You have to work through it. And which is why, for me, the shadow work that you were talking about, we take one thing at a time. There is that resistance. People don't want to go there. And then, I'll touch upon it, circle back, come back. It's a process so that the person is ready and willing and in a place to see themselves in the mirror through their shadow. The entire drama here is for us to suppress the shadow and for our ego to come up and us be somebody that we would like to be, and in our shadow we're not, right? That's the whole game. So it is a long process.
Yeah.
I say minimum 3 months. I have rarely had anybody leave in 3 months. Most of the people stay for at least 12 months, and a lot changes because then we're looking at their money, we're looking at their relationship, we're looking at their health, we're looking at, and then they start to see how they're all connected. They all come to me with one very specific immediate problem, perhaps, whether it's an illness or a relationship or money or whatever it might be. And then as we start working, everything starts to get better. So it is a process. It takes time.
But sometimes, in that process, people just want to give up, or people just feel like there are new bruises or new, I would say, issues which crop up, which kind of deter them from the path, or which kind of deter them saying that, I'm not enjoying this, or this is not working out for me. And healing as a process, like you said, it's a process and it takes time. But people in this day and age where quick delivery, quick service is something which we all have got accustomed to, how do you ensure that people are at it for a long haul, right? They are playing the game of a marathon, or they are running a marathon rather than just doing sprints, which today all of us are in that day and age of technology, that we all want to run sprints.
So, Anis, the decision of the client to stay with me is theirs.
Mm-hmm.
They can leave at any time. They know that. They're not bound in a contract. I don't take 12 months worth of money upfront that, now they're tied. No, you can leave at any time. So one of the things that I say to a person who comes to me to understand what I do and if I can help them is I tell them this is not a 3-minute, 7-second, 5-day, that the sales process. I said, if that's what you want, I will not give that to you.
Yeah.
Though people do have instantaneous benefits in healing, but I don't market it that way because I think it is wrong and it is a disservice to the client. So I tell them that it is going to take time, and they'll say, how much time? I'll say, it depends on how much we want to clean.
Yep.
Right? And then I let them know that they will decide, as in the first few weeks, they start to feel the benefit and they continue to see the benefit. You have to be coming from a not very smart place to say, I'm getting all of this and, I'm going to quit. They don't want to quit. So I'll give you a quick example, if I may.
Sure, please.
So a lady I was working with referred her sister to me, who
Okay.
lives in London, England.
Okay.
So she spoke to me about her sister as being a complete failure in life,
Okay.
about 40 years of age and really not very much to show for herself. But one of the big things was she had a recent diagnosis for something called autoimmune hepatitis.
Okay.
So then I spoke to this lady because she didn't know what this was about. She wanted to find out. We had a nice hour-long chat. She asked me all the questions and she said, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. So we started. And when we started, for me, so she had diabetes, she had high blood pressure, and she had this autoimmune hepatitis. Now, we all know that autoimmune disease has no cure. Diabetes can be managed, but it doesn't really go away. So we started. She had many other things that she had this feeling that snakes were rolling inside of her. That was her really big thing, among many other things. And the first week, the snakes were gone.
Nice.
In about a month and a half, so when a person is under the treatment of a doctor, I do not interfere with that because that's unethical, irresponsible, and illegal.
Yeah.
So whatever treatment you're under, you by all means will continue to do that. So she was on 3 immunosuppressants a day.
Okay. Wow.
Month and a half later, the doctor reduced her to 1 or immunosuppressant a day.
Wow.
So you see, when a client is experiencing this,
Yep.
she was in a 3-month part-time contract position and had no hope for anything else, had not been doing very well professionally. So at the end of 3 months of working together, the lady whose position she had taken over was not going to come back, and she was made permanent in that very position.
Wow. Good for her.
Then she had confidence issues. Very poor, very, very low self-esteem. She had never shared with anybody, but she had been sexually abused between the ages of 10 and 18 by the tuition teacher in her own home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Her parents, she was darker, fatter, all of that. So her confidence was completely shattered. We worked on that. Now she's a pretty well confident woman, right? She just messaged me. Her husband and her are now, they've been in a rental their whole life.
Okay.
Now they're buying a home in London.
Good for her.
Right? So you see the plethora of benefits.
Yep.
And it's hard to explain. She came with one thing, but then, when I sit in front of my client and I take that I need that snapshot, and then I know what all to work, and everything is connected. Right? So they keep working, they keep benefiting, they keep staying. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And this, I would say, the story which you have shared with one of your clients, about one of your clients, is really heartwarming because what I have realized in my own journey that healing, there's so much your mind can achieve because of the trauma, the issues you've had or an individual has. Your mind starts believing something else, where you can retrain your mind to believe and heal your own body and heal its own mind and heal the heart and heal every part of your body, which basically is seen outward. And I have seen that personally happening for me. This really motivates me personally further to continue on the healing journey. But you know, let's switch gears, Ajita, because there is so much about you which I would like to uncover. How did Toronto happen? You know, what got you to from Bombay, Bandra, and the places which you've lived by. What got you to Canada?
Sadly, it's not a happy story.
Okay.
So, my husband and I, when we got married, we ran into some family issues.
Okay.
And the family, and that was really bizarre because everything was going brilliantly well, and one fine day, with all of us being exactly the same person, it was not.
Oh wow.
And then it became a really, really bad downward spiral. And the only thing we could think of was to separate ourselves drastically. And, we had never thought about leaving the country. And, my husband was coming back from work one day and he was reading the midday, and, there was an ad for immigration to New Zealand. So we explored that. And then there was something else with Canada, and we explored that. And that just boom, boom, boom happened. And before we knew it, we had paperwork, and then we thought, okay, what are we going to do? Let's just go travel. We'll stay there. We'll see. And we always can come back. And then we just decided to stay. It's been 25 years now, a little over.
And your guests are, and not your guests, your clients are all over the place. And healing through these virtual sessions can be done. I'm not saying no, but an in person kind of takes it to a different level. What do you prefer, in person or doing it virtually?
To me, it matters not. Not one is better than the other. Because even when they're here, most times I do not physically touch anybody. One of the big things is I don't want to pick up their energy.
Yeah.
So I am not a big hugger, and for those reasons. When you understand the fundamental of the universe and the principles of healing, you just close your eyes and create the impact. Because time and space and all of this, it's all vibrational, and it doesn't matter. If I may just, sorry, there's a caveat here. From, earlier you alluded to healing through the mind. Even the healing that I do is a one-way street, in the sense, so if you were to, say, Ajita, I have a backache.
Okay.
Can you help me with that? So I would just ask you to be still. You could be playing golf. To me, it doesn't matter. But I like people, to be a little present with me. And I would just go into that space and I would clear it. So it is a very one-sided. You are receiving, you are letting go, in which your very fundamental is involved, but the rest of your conscious mind and your body, and like, you're not really involved with me. And which is what I say in my healing. I will clean your slate through the healing, which is a very, very quiet process. The teaching aspect of it is appealing to your mind and giving you a different perspective on how to think and behave, so that you can change your, sort of your patterns in life that you create. You rightly, sort of alluded to that we create karma or problems by the way we think and behave. And so that's where the brain gets engaged. But in the healing process, pretty well nothing is engaged, because it's a very distinct, we'll talk for half an hour and for half an hour we're going to keep quiet and I'll do my thing. So that's kind of the process.
Now, when you said, okay, you have a backache and, I have certain aches, we can talk about it separately, but how does, really, I'm intrigued and we can definitely talk more separately on that. But building on to what you've just said, now as a healer, as a person who's running your own company, as an individual company, uh, do you have a team in place to do your marketing management, or you're still a single run person company on how things operate for you today?
No, so I do have people who do other related things for me.
Sure.
My joke is, and I'm very well aware of what I know and what I don't know.
Okay.
So I stick to my lane. I know this and the other stuff. So I do have some people who take care of some of the other stuff.
Do you still indulge in interior designing as part of your job? Because that's something which you've studied, you've done that. Do you do that continuing apart from, practicing healing and spiritual practices?
So not very much, but
Okay.
I love design. And I designed it on a little tissue paper over dinner one day,
Okay.
and pretty well nothing has changed from that original design.
Sure.
And I really loved the process of getting into all of that. But I think so wherever I get a chance, I will. But I think my purpose is the healing. And I have, in time, come to the conclusion that the distractions are not meant to be indulged in. So if you were to say, Ajita, if you have a little bit of time, let's build something in Goa or something, I would just be, sort of all in very quickly. But I try to stay focused on this.
Very interesting. As part of the healing, and I would love to come back to this entire process of healing, and this is a selfish question. There are so many tools which are available, in mindfulness practice and breath work, and, and it can go on in spiritual practice. There are so many practices, and which a person can indulge. And you spoke about habits, you spoke about tools earlier. How do you craft a blueprint which is encompassing all these tools or techniques or practices, and not make it overwhelming for an individual? So for example, if somebody tells me, hey, you have to do meditation every day for even for 5 minutes, you know now it's a habit, right? And I've seen the benefit of it, but sometimes the day it takes an effort to take that 5 minutes out also. Now that's my mind taking me away from something which I probably enjoy more. But that's just one practice, there are so many more. uh, how does an individual, and more importantly you, recommend those blueprints, but those tools and techniques to come together?
I don't.
Okay.
So so through the process that we're together,
Mm-hmm.
so I have some meditations that I have recorded.
Okay.
A lot of them are guided meditations. So it
Okay.
becomes easier for a newcomer to, at least just sit and listen. So they're not completely on their own. So, I start with chakra
Okay.
clearing, and, that's our core energy centers. Um, I try not to overwhelm them because it really derails the process. Because it's like somebody who comes to you with a broken leg.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're saying that, if you play soccer, your this leg will become stronger. And, if you play TT, your arms will stay strong because your leg is hurt, but then, the rest of you. So now I find that those are the things that actually derail people from the spiritual journey, because we are short of time. There are so many things we have to do. And a lot of these practices are not easy to do. They
Yep.
are time consuming. Um, you know, so breath work, for example, why do we do breath work? We do breath work to clean the soul. Why do we meditate? We meditate to clean the soul. So a lot of this work that we talk about, somatic work, all of this stuff, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is these are all aspects of shadow work.
Yeah.
So with my clients, I dive deep into shadow work very specifically. So I have a workbook with, so I do inner child work. I
Okay.
do shadow work. I will do self-love work with them, right? And that's the homework. So they have to do some meditation. And as they work through each of these questions,
Mm-hmm.
I am doing the healing for them. So I'm cleaning their slate while they are going through this kind of an exercise, which to a great extent is an intellectual exercise, because now they can see
Okay.
what is the problem, why is the problem, and with me, they can offload. I also try not to sell this book as a
Sure.
tool,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about answering just the questions. It's about the analysis of those questions where the gold lies, right? And then you
Interesting.
build on that for the subsequent things. So that process goes on, the requirement for a lot of other things substantially reduces. Now, when they leave,
Mm-hmm.
I have some recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do some very fundamental stuff, so all that is taught, you keep your vibration up, Anis,
Yeah.
through, managing your thoughts essentially, and therefore you manage your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get into trouble. You don't need a lot. Not everybody is
Blessed to have
on an
enough time.
evolutionary journey of
Yeah.
spirituality, right? They just want to be good
Yeah.
in their everyday life.
Yep.
They become interested in aspects of spirituality, but they're
Yep.
not necessarily wanting to go too far ahead with it. And it really works. And for the ones that are interested in evolving, then that's a little bit of a different conversation. And those people are willing to forego maybe a dinner to do meditation or various different things. So then I give them different types of tools.
Nice. So it's very individualized. It's very dependent upon how I would want to prioritize certain aspects and how far should I or would I want to reach and touch the healing process through these different layers. It's like peeling the onion, right? Like how far do I want to get to that bud? And do I really want to get to the bud? Is that, or am I, you, each one of us, like life happens every day. We may feel we might have got back to bud, but the onions might, the layers may come back with some variety of new aspects which we might have not uncovered or might not realize. So
For
that's an,
sure.
yeah, so that's an interesting perspective. Now, Ajita, you've been doing this for some time. Where's next? What's the future holds for your company, for what you're doing, for HIIH? How, where does the future see from here?
So I'm going to go back to a statement that you just made about how healing is forever,
Yep.
right? Depending on if you want to.
Yep.
So because I am interested in always evolving, and I'll come back to your question, but this will give you a perspective.
Sure.
Like I said, I've been this cave healer. I've sat in my cave, I've done my thing, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done, group courses, I've done some talks, and I've just been happy doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my clients, and this lady I told you about, the ayahuasca lady, they've been after me that I need to scale impact.
Yeah.
And I've been like, yeah, whatever that means. And it's okay. And, yeah, we'll talk about it. And then I reached a point 2 years into the conversation that, okay, I am ready.
Okay.
And yet I could feel a lot of resistance within my heart. And I had to get to a point when I had to stop, look within, and say, what is holding you back? And I don't know how many listeners will go through this podcast, but I'm going to open my heart here and be very honest and vulnerable and tell you I came up with the fear of being seen. Right? For this, like, people would think I have tremendous confidence and I have no problem in speaking, etc., etc. But that next level required me to up level in a way that would put me in a place that I had internal wounding, and I had to literally go back to the point where it was created and began to heal. And so the future now is, I am absolutely thrilled and excited to talk about what healing is. Today we have spoken about bespoke one-on-one healing.
Yeah.
I can do a lot of healing for masses and communities with people in a room. There's a different process. It's a shorter process, obviously, as you can understand. A lot of healing through my teaching. So I'm very keen to start talking to corporates. Corporates are interested in their bottom line because it's a business, understandably so. But it's the human asset that does the work, and then the human asset is wounded. So if we do the work, and of course the different types of courses, different types of workshops, so the whole idea is to really start talking about healing, step out of that cave in a big way, and just own it. And there'll be people who will poo-poo it. They don't understand. And I tell people when they say to me, I don't believe in this, I say, if I may say so, don't say you don't believe in it, just say you don't know enough. And that you're not interested in knowing enough, and that's, you're entitled. You don't want to know, that's fine. But so that's the whole idea, to really talk about what healing is, various types of healing, what the education can do, spiritual teaching, and just going and talking to kids, young adults, when they have just starting their lives. If they know all of these fundamental principles on which the universe is built, and they start to take those and building their lives, they would not be in as much trouble as we see a lot of, older millennials. And so that's sort of, it's a bit of a lofty dream, but
no, it's an amazing dream. I think you are expanding your wings to heal many more people rather than select few. And I wish you best of luck with that, because definitely it's a very empowering and a very thoughtful journey which you're taking on, which will probably not only create impact for few but for many people as you touch them and as you heal them along the journey. No, this has been
that is
an
what I could hope for.
amazing conversation, Ajita. I mentioned before we started recording that this is a more selfish, and these questions were more personal than structured, I would say, because I'm on a journey of healing as part of my personal growth transformation program, and what I've realized that I can only grow if I heal. Uh, you know and when you grow, you it's like, a child when it grows, it's cracking its bones, and the body learns to heal, and that's how growth happens. And so if you are in a personal growth, you are hurting yourself and you have to heal, uh, in many ways. So no,
Yeah.
thank you for taking time out. It's been an absolute, and a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much. And, I just applaud you for being on this journey. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
You are undertaking something that's not easy,
Yeah.
but I'm sure every day you thank yourself for sticking to it, doing it. And, you alluded to another very great point, which is the conclusion that you have come to, which is amazing. Personal growth without healing is incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
So, congratulations and God bless you. Uh, I hope you continue to grow and thrive.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was truly a phenomenal conversation, very in depth. And I hope you had some good takeaways because you have said that this was selfish on your part. So I
Yep.
hope that you had some good takeaways from this.
No, definitely. I have a lot of notes, mental notes, and definitely once the show goes live, I will have all the transcriptions. So, and I will ensure that I leave your connect, and my team will do that, so that if there is any audience who would like to get in touch with you, they would do that as well.
I appreciate that by all means. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you, Ajita. You have a good day and best of luck.
Thank you. You too. Take care.